Hello, do you have panic attacks when you're driving on a motorway? Have you suddenly had this problem come on where you've been driving for years and years, never had this problem before, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you just had a massive panic attack and you felt the sudden need to pull over? And did it get worse when people were overtaking you or really close behind you, or you felt fine in the first lane, but whenever you went to overtake someone, you felt terrible? Was it just motorways that were a problem to begin with, and then the problem got worse and you found you couldn't even drive on back roads and then side roads, and then you couldn't even drive on any road at all because it often develops as time goes by if you just leave it and do nothing about it? Well, if you're suffering from that problem, don't worry, because I help people overcome that all of the time, and in this video we're going to take a look at where it comes from and what you can do about it. My name's Paul, and I work online with people all over the world to help them overcome their fear of driving. And although I'm talking about motorways in this video, whether you call them motorways, highways, freeways, wherever you are in the world, they can be called different things. It's all the same thing. It's when you're driving on a high-speed road and you feel this panic come on. Although I've already made over 100 videos on the fear of driving of all types, whether it's bridges, driving at night time, driving in new places, unfamiliar areas, I'm going to give you some new ways of looking at things in this video and some different ways of thinking about it than I've ever mentioned before. So if you don't know from watching my other videos, the fear of driving has nothing to do with driving. What this is, it's simply an emotion from your past which is trapped and is coming out now when you drive. So as I've said in many of my videos, you are not going to fix this by having driving lessons, and I know because as well as being a professional therapist, I've also been a driving instructor for over 20 years, and I've taught over 1,000 people to drive and trained hundreds, probably thousands of driving instructors, and nothing on the syllabus, whether it's in the UK or abroad, and I know from working with people all over the world, nothing driving instructors do is going to help you overcome a fear of driving, because it's nothing to do with driving anyway. The driving is just how the problem is coming out, that's how it's choosing to present itself. But here's something you may not realise. Did you know you've actually had this problem your whole life? Now, people are often confused by this and they say, oh no, because it only started last year or 3 years ago, and before that I was fine. You're actually not correct, because you have had this problem for many years, but did you realise that it was just showing in different ways? So one example of this is when I worked with a client once, and the cause of their driving anxiety was actually being bullied at school. Now when you just say it like that, it can sound silly, and people say, well, that's daft. How could the fear of driving and panic attacks on the motorway be caused by being bullied at school? Well, you see, what you don't realise is, if you just go from the first step to the final step, it will sound daft. It's a bit silly. It's a bit like picking up a piece of metal and saying, I'm going to drive this down the motorway, but you haven't yet made the metal into a car. It hasn't been processed. So if you go from start to finish of anything, any procedure, it can sound silly. But let me explain how that person's problem started. So the way this worked with a person that was being bullied at school was that because they were being bullied, their mind came up with a solution to that problem, because your mind is always doing its best to keep you out of danger and out of harm's way. So their mind had the idea, hey, I'm going to give them horrible stomach pains and stomach cramps. And of course, when they had these pains, they had to have time off school, which meant they didn't get bullied because they weren't at school. When they went through life, they hadn't realised that that problem had stayed with them, but it had taken different forms. So when they left school and they no longer needed that, the thing is, the problem won't just go. This problem never just goes. It will look for another thing to do. It's like someone who wants a job. Your problem had a job, and you've made it redundant. You've kind of sacked it or fired it by leaving school. So it thinks, hey, I need to do something else. And that's why, and this is something people are often shocked by, I asked them what happened after you left school. What was going on with your life then? And they said, oh, well, it's funny because I started working and I had these pains at work instead. But then I went. But I found after that, I went for a promotion and I got really nervous in the interview, which is weird because I've never had nerves in an interview before. And as we were talking throughout the session, it slowly dawned on them that this was the same problem. I won't go over all of the steps he went through, but he went from being bullied at school as a stomachache to being nervous in interviews to something else, to something else, to something else, to something else. Then he went to driving anxiety. So the way you overcome panic attacks on the motorway is to find out what's really behind them, what's the true original meaning of this problem, because you've probably experienced this where you think, this is stupid, I've never been nervous driving before, I've been doing it years, I've done the same journey years and years and years, I've done the same route, or route if you're in America, because I work with a lot of people who say route, whatever. You think I've done the same route for years and years and years. It doesn't make any sense. Well, it doesn't make sense because you see you're applying logic to something that is not logical in the normal sense of the word. You see your subconscious or unconscious mind does have logic, but it won't seem to. And I've done another video, I'll link to on the screen now, about logic and anxiety and how the two things are complete polar opposites. So although it doesn't make any logical sense to you, it actually does make sense to your subconscious mind, because your mind is giving you this problem it gave you many, many years ago, and it thinks it's still playing a vital role in your life. It never relinquished that power. It never really understood that you left school. So in that client's case, all we did, although it sounds crazy, it sounds really funny, we made their mind understand that they were no longer at school. They left school years ago. And you might be thinking, well, that's obvious. This is the thing, it's obvious to your conscious mind, not to your subconscious mind. Because in your subconscious mind, there is no concept of time. So even though you may be in your 40s, 50s, 60s, as many people I work with now are, you're actually still a little 5-year-old kid at school being bullied. And that's what's happening. Now, it's not all because of that. That's just one person's example. And please don't go thinking, oh, that's what it is for me. Every single person I work with has a unique reason for their problem. It's never the same thing. And you might think, well, what if I can't find that? What if I can't find the memory? This is a common misconception. You don't have to find the root cause. Think of your problem like being a tree trunk. Imagine you've got to find the tree trunk, but there are many branches coming off that tree trunk, and you can follow any of the branches and trace it back to the trunk. So it doesn't matter if you can't consciously think of the problem. You don't need to. I've solved problems with people, and I've had problems solved myself when I'm a client, because I do this as a client to practice. And I had no idea what the original cause was. The original memory is long, long ago, decades ago. You don't have to remember it. You don't have to think, oh, it was that. Now, in most cases, probably 90% of cases, you will. But I hope you can see, just by watching this fairly short video, that we've gone from panic attacks on the motorway to talking about something that happened in your childhood. So you see now why driving instructors, apart from myself, because I'm a driving instructor and a therapist, but your average driving instructor doing the average driving lesson who's telling you, check the mirrors, check your speed, you're okay. And these websites from apparent experts that say, make sure you're well rested the night before, make sure your blood sugar level is correct. Yeah, you've probably heard this before and you're laughing thinking, yeah, I don't know, that doesn't work. Turn off the music, don't have any distractions. It's all nonsense. They are thinking logically. The reason why I do work so effectively is because I don't use logic. Think about this. For an unconscious problem, you need an unconscious solution. You know, people often ask me, I don't get it, this problem just doesn't make any sense, why doesn't it make sense? To which I reply, why does it need to make sense? And many people have never thought of this. They think, well, it's got to make sense, I've got to come up with some logical, rational reason. I can promise you, you will not fix panic attacks on the motorway with logic. So if you do want to work with me on this, just contact me through my website, firstdrive.com, and there'll be a link in the description to my website, which has got dozens of pages of information on all types of driving anxiety, such as bridges, motorways, nighttime, because often your fear of driving won't be restricted to one type, and if it is, without worrying you, it normally grows to others. So you may find that you just can't drive on a motorway to begin with, but it will often then spread to back roads and other roads that you saw as your salvation, your escape plan. Your mind will take that away from you, and it makes the problem worse. So if you want to overcome this, contact me through my website, firstdrive.com. Check out these other videos on the screen now for more help with your fear of driving. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you again soon for more videos.